All right, let's jump right in. We're going to take a look at a few of the top stories shaping India's tech scene right now. And what's fascinating is that when you put them all together, they tell this one big, cohesive story. It's a story of massive ambition clashing head-on with some pretty complex realities. You've got an ecosystem that's moving at a breakneck speed, but it's also running into some serious headwinds. So let's start with a number that just, makes you stop and stare. $20 billion. Now, this isn't just some random figure on a spreadsheet. No, this is a huge statement of intent. It's a massive bet on the future of India's entire tech industry. So, the big question, the one we're all thinking, is where is all this money actually going? And maybe more importantly, what does this fire hose of cash really signal for the future of tech in India? That's exactly what we're going to unpack here. First up, let's talk about the AI gold rush. This is where that giant number really comes into focus. You see, India is making this huge strategic bet that it can become a global powerhouse in, well, the future of intelligence itself. And this chart really puts the scale of that bet into perspective. I mean, look at this. By 2025, private AI investment commitments are expected to blow past $20 billion. That kind of funding puts India way ahead of other major economies like Japan, Germany, and even France. It's a clear signal that India is here to compete on the world stage. But here's the thing, right? Throwing all this money at a problem doesn't just create momentum. It also brings up some really tough questions. Like, is there even enough local talent to back up this kind of crazy growth? Do we have the right rules and ethical guidelines in place for AI? And the big one, how much of this value is actually going to stay and be created within India? Okay, now let's shift gears to the second piece of India's ambitious push. This is all about the strategic effort to build up its own domestic manufacturing, to basically turn itself into a self-reliant electronics powerhouse. And at the absolute heart of this strategy is the Make in India initiative. This is the government's big flagship policy. And the goal is simple: convince global companies that the best place to design, build, and assemble their products is right there in India. The endgame? To slash the country's dependence on imports. And the game plan is actually pretty straightforward. It's a clear three-step process. First, the government is looking to cut import duties on key electronic parts. That makes it cheaper to assemble things locally, which, in turn, helps with step 2, attracting all that global investment. And the ultimate goal, step 3, is to localize the entire value chain, from the tiniest screw all the way to the finished product. Okay, so we've talked about all this ambition, but now it's time for a reality check. Because on the surface, the consumer market, it looks pretty healthy. But when you start to dig just a little bit deeper, you find a story that's, well, it's a lot more complicated. It might even be built on a fragile foundation. So let's look at the numbers for the third quarter of 2025. Smartphone shipments hit a really impressive 48.4 million units. You've got players like Vivo leading the pack with about a 20% share, Samsung behind them at 14%. At first glance, it really looks like a market that's on the up and up. And here's the crucial point. The headline reads, 3% year-on-year growth. That sounds pretty good, right? But here's the catch. That growth wasn't really driven by strong, organic consumer demand. Nope. It was propped up by things like festive season sales, special offers, and incentives for stores to just stock up on inventory. It suggests all this momentum is actually pretty fragile and might not even last. And that brings us to another dose of reality: dependency. You see, India's tech ecosystem is so deeply plugged into the global infrastructure. And that means a problem on the complete other side of the world can have a direct and immediate impact right at home. So get this. On October 20th, Amazon Web Services, AWS, had a massive outage. The root cause? A technical DNS issue in one of its US data centers. But the result was a 15-hour disruption that took down thousands of apps and websites, not just in America, but all over the world, including tons of businesses in India that rely on those services. And that right there is the heart of the issue. Just think about that. A single point of failure located thousands of miles away managed to expose a huge vulnerability for Indian businesses. It really puts a spotlight on the systemic risk that comes with relying on these centralized foreign cloud providers for your critical infrastructure. This whole incident was a massive wake-up call, especially for India's booming startup and software sectors. It was a pretty stark reminder of just how risky their infrastructure can be. It highlighted this urgent need to diversify their cloud strategy, build in more backup plans, and start looking at local alternatives so they aren't so vulnerable next time. So, where does all of this leave us? Well, India's tech scene is really at a crossroads. It's trying to balance this incredible forward momentum with some very real present-day headwinds and dependencies that it's facing. This table really just pulls it all together, doesn't it? For every ambitious internal push, there's a corresponding external reality check. On one hand, you have $20 billion for AI. On the other, you have questions about talent and ethics. You've got the Make in India policy, but the ecosystem still needs to catch up. You see 48 million phones shipped, but you realize it's fragile, promotion-led growth. And a push for local infrastructure runs right into a deep dependency on global providers. And ultimately, this is the picture we're left with. It's an ecosystem that is absolutely surging forward with incredible energy and investment. And yet, at the same time, it's tethered by these really significant dependencies and underlying challenges that you can't ignore. And that leaves us with one final and, I think, crucial question. As India races to build this amazing tech future it envisions, the biggest challenge might just be making sure its ambitions don't outpace its ability to solve the fundamental, foundational problems it's facing right here, right now.